I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey Patriot Warrior fam, I'm Face, and these are the histories that America forgot. According to Wikipedia, the Indian Massacre of 1622 took place in the English colony of Virginia on the 22nd of March, 1622. English explorer John Smith, though he was not an eyewitness, wrote in his History of Virginia that warriors of the Powhatan, quote, came unarmed into our house with deer, turkeys, fish, fruits, and other provisions to sell us, end quote. They then grabbed any tools or weapons available and killed all English settlers they found, including men, women, and children of all ages. Ope Chankanoa, chief of the Powhatan Confederacy, led a coordinated series of surprise attacks that ended up killing a total of 347 people, a quarter of the population of the colony of Virginia. Founded in 1607, Jamestown, Virginia was the site of the first successful English settlement of North America and served as the capital of the colony of Virginia. The town's tobacco economy, which quickly degraded the land and required new land, led to the settlers' constant expansion and seizure of Powhatan lands, ultimately provoking the massacre. Upon the settlement's founding in 1607, the local indigenous tribes were willing to trade provisions to the Jamestown colonists for metal tools. By 1609, Colony of Virginia Governor John Smith began sending raiding parties to demand provisions from local indigenous settlements. These raiding parties burned down settlements that refused their demands and frequently stole provisions, leading to resentment of the colonists and precipitating the conflict. The raiding parties further alienated the colonists from the indigenous tribes, who eventually laid siege to Jamestown Fort for several months. Unable to secure more provisions, many colonists in Jamestown died of starvation during the, quote, starving time, end quote, in 1609 to 1610. The London Company's primary concern was the survival of the colony. Due to the interests of the company, the colonists would be required to maintain civil relations with the Powhatan. The Powhatan and English realized that they could benefit from each other through trade once peace was restored. In exchange for food, the chief asked the colonists to provide him with metal hatchets and copper. Unlike John Smith, other early leaders of Virginia, such as Thomas Dale and Thomas Gates, based their actions on different thinking. They were military men and considered the Powhatan Confederacy as essentially a military problem. The Powhatan people concluded that the English were not settling in Jamestown for the purpose of trade, but rather to possess the land. As Chief Powhatan said, quote, Your coming is not for trade, but to invade my people and possess my country. Having seen the death of all my people thrice, I know the difference of peace and war better than any other country. If he fought the English, Powhatan predicted, he would be so haunted by Smith that he could neither rest, eat, nor sleep. But his tired men must watch, and if a twig but break, every one cry, "There comes Captain John Smith." Then he must fly, he know not whither, and thus with miserable fear end his miserable life. End quote. In 1610, the London Company instructed Gates, the newly appointed colonial governor, to Christianize the natives and absorb them into the colony. As for Chief Powhatan, Gates was told, quote, "If you find it not best to make him your prisoner, yet you must make him your tributary, and all the other his warrowances, or subordinate chiefs, about him, first to acknowledge no other lord but King James." End quote. When Gates arrived in Jamestown, he decided to evacuate the settlement because he thought the government's plan was not feasible. As the colonists were sailing down the James River towards the open sea, they were met by the incoming fleet of Thomas West, 3rd Baron de la Warr, off Mulberry Island. Taking command as governor, de la Warr ordered the fort reoccupied. He plotted conquest of the surrounding tribes. In July 1610, West sent Gates against Kecowatan people. Quote, "Gates lured the Indians into the open by means of music and dance act by his drummer, and then slaughtered them." End quote. This was the first Anglo-Powhatan War. A group of colonists led by Samuel Argall captured Pocahontas, the daughter of Powhatan, and held her hostage until he would agree to their demands. The colonists, quote, "demanded that all Powhatan captives be released, return all English weapons taken by his warriors, and agree upon a lasting peace." End quote. While Pocahontas was held by the English, she met John Rolfe, whom she later married. While in captivity, Pocahontas was taught the English language, customs, and the Anglican religion. She was baptized as a Christian and took the name Rebecca. Rolfe wrote that the way to maintain peace between the Powhatan and the English was to marry Pocahontas, not, quote, "with the unbridled desire of carnal affection, but for the good of the colony and the glory of God." Such a marriage might bring peace between the warring English and Powhatan, just as it would satisfy Pocahontas's desire. End quote. After they married, more peaceful relations were maintained for a time between the English colonists and the Powhatan Confederacy. Edward Waterhouse, Secretary of the Virginia Company, wrote, quote, "Such was the conceit of firm peace and amity, as that there was seldom or never a sword worn, and a piece, or firearm, seldomer, except for a deer or fowl. The plantations of particular adventurers and planters were placed scatteringly and stragglingly, as a choice vein from rich ground invited them, and the further from neighbors held the better. The houses generally set upon to the savages, who were always friendly entertained at the tables of the English, and commonly lodged in their bedchambers." End quote. In 1618, after the death of Powhatan, his brother Opitchapom, a late and quiet old man, became paramount chief of the Confederacy. Their youngest brother, Opechancanough, was probably the effective leader with his friend, war chief, and advisor, Nemattanough. Neither of the younger men believed that peaceful relations with the colonists could be maintained. Perhaps in 1620 to 1621, Opitchapom retired or he was deposed, but possibly he died in 1630, and he was succeeded by his younger brother, Opechancanough. Opechancanough and Nemattanough began developing plans for the unavoidable war, having recovered from their defeat commanding Pamunkey warriors during the First Anglo-Powhatan War. They planned to shock the English with an attack that would leave them contained in a small trading outpost, rather than expanding throughout the area with new plantations. In the spring of 1622, after a settler murdered his advisor, Nemattanough, Opechancanough launched a campaign of surprise attacks on at least 31 separate English settlements and plantations, mostly along the James River, extending as far as Henricus. Jamestown was saved by the warning of an Indian youth living at the home of Richard Pace, one of the colonists. The youth woke Pace to warn him of the planned attack. Living across the river from Jamestown, Pace secured his family and rode to the settlement to spread the alarm. Jamestown increased its defenses. The name of the Indian who warned Pace is not recorded in any of the contemporary accounts. Although legend has named him Chonko, this may be wrong. An Indian named Chauco was mentioned in a letter from the Virginia Council to the Virginia Company of London dated April 4, 1623. He is described not as a youth but as, quote, one who had lived much amongst the English, and by revealing the plot to divers upon the day of massacre, saved their lives, end quote. Chauco may be the same person as Chaucro, an Indian mentioned in a court record of the 25th of October, 1624, as living with Lieutenant Sharp, Captain William Powell, and Captain William Pierce, quote, in the time of Sir Thosdale's government, end quote. That is before 1616. It is possible that the older Indian, Chauco, and the youth who warned Richard Pace have been conflated. During the one-day surprise attack, the Powhatan tribes attacked many of the smaller communities, including Henricus and his fledgling college for children of natives and settlers alike. In the neighborhood of Martin's Hundred, 73 people were killed. More than half the population died in Wolstenholme town, where only 2 houses and a part of the church were left standing. In all, the Powhatan killed about 400 colonists, a third of the white population, and took 20 women captive. The captives lived and worked as Powhatan Indians until they died or were ransomed. The settlers abandoned the Falling Creek Ironworks, Henricus, and Smith's Hundred. After the attack, the surviving English settlers worked on a plan of action. Quote, by unanimous decision, both the council and planters, it was agreed to draw people together into fewer settlements for better defense. The colony intended to gather men together to plan a retaliatory attack, but this was difficult. Of the survivors, quote, 2/3 were said to have been women and children, and men who were unable to work or to go against the Indians, end quote. Opechancanoa withdrew his warriors, believing that the English would behave as Native Americans would when defeated, pack up and leave, or learn their lesson and respect the power of the Powhatan. Following the event, Opechancanoa told the Patawomek, who were not part of the Confederacy and had remained neutral, that he expected, quote, before the end of 2 moons there should not be an Englishman in all their countries, end quote. He misunderstood the English colonists and their backers overseas. In May 1623, plans were made with Opechancanoa to negotiate peace and the release of the missing women. He released Mistress Boyce as a good faith gesture, with the implied message that he would negotiate for the release of the remaining women. Captain Tucker and a group of musketeers met with Opechancanoa and the members of the Powhatan village along the Potomac River on May 22nd. In preparation for the event, Dr. John Potts prepared poisoned wine. Captain Tucker and others offered ceremonial toasts, and 200 Powhatans died after drinking the wine. Another 50 people were killed. Opechancanoa escaped, but a number of the tribal leaders were killed. The English retaliated by attacking and burning down Powhatan villages. Tribal members and the captive women fled the English attacks. They also were hungry due to the lost corn crops. 3 of the women, including Jane Dickinson and Mistress Jeffreys, the wife of Nathaniel Jeffreys, who died in the massacre. In England, when the massacre occurred, John Smith believed that the settlers would not leave their plantations to defend the colony. He planned to return with a ship filled with soldiers, sailors, and ammunition to establish a, quote, running army, end quote, able to fight the Powhatan. Smith's goal was to, quote, enforce the savages to leave their country and bring them into the fear of subjection that every man should follow their business securely, end quote. Smith, however, never returned to Virginia. The colonists used the 1622 massacre as a justification for seizing Powhatan land for the next 10 years. The colonists, in revenge for the massacre, attacked the Powhatan through the, Quote, the use of force, surprise attacks, famine resulting from the burning of their corn, destroying their boats, canoes, and houses, breaking their fishing weirs, and assaulting them in their hunting expedition, pursuing them with horses, and using bloodhounds to find them, and mastiffs to seize them, driving them to flee within reach of their enemies along other tribes, and assimilating and abetting their enemies against them. End quote. In 1624, Virginia was made an English royal colony by King James I. This meant that the Crown took direct authority rather than allowing guidance by the London Company. The Crown could exercise its patronage for royal favorites. Settlers continued to encroach on the land of the Powhatan tribes, and the colonial government tended to change or ignore agreements with the natives when no longer in the colony's interest. The tribes fell increasingly frustrated with the settlers. The next major confrontation with the Powhatan, the Third Anglo-Powhatan War, occurred in 1644, resulting in the deaths of about 500 colonists. While similar to the death toll in 1622, the loss a generation later represents less than 10% of the population and had far less impact on the colony. This time, the elderly Ope Chankanoa, who was being transported by litter, was captured by the colonists. Imprisoned at Jamestown, he was killed by one of his guards. The death marked the beginning of the increasingly precipitous decline of the once powerful Powhatan. Its member tribes eventually left the area entirely, gradually lived among the colonists, or lived in one of the few reservations established in Virginia. Most of these were also subject to incursion and seizure of land by the ever-expanding European population. In modern times, 7 tribes of the original Powhatan Confederacy are recognized in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The Pamunkey and Mattapony still have control of their reservations established in the 17th century, each located between the rivers of the same names within the boundaries of present-day King William County.
Yeah, let's go. I'm unstoppable, do the impossible. I'm irresponsible, yet I'm phenomenal. I got an arsenal, I'm dropping bombs, you know. No, I'm not stopping, no. Conquer the obstacle. To the top, here I go, think I'm chosen to be the king of rock, think the people have spoken. I can hear the tick-tock of the clock, I'm in motion. So now I'm gonna pop, causing all this commotion.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah, I'm addicted to the grind, man. That's right, so I refuse to waste time, man. Yeah, one day it all will be fine, man. Let's go. Gotta commit to the climb, you know, man. We're back with the Guinness, setting records every minute, every track. In addiction to the fact that we're winning, still we lack, something's missing. Need a track that is hitting, making racks, making millions.
Oh, yeah.
That's the mission.
I don't waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah.